Welcome to Trial Site News Roundup. Today we'll be talking about the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance and their public response to the NIH and its updated stance on ivermectin. Then we discuss growing momentum for ivermectin in the German press as Pharmacy Journal introduces ivermectin as a possible treatment for COVID-19, followed by a major ivermectin study in a West African country called the Gambia, which is also focusing on COVID-19. And so, from Trial Site News, I'm Adrian, and the News Roundup starts now. So we recently did an episode where we discussed how the NIH, after having met with the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, or the FLCCC, and Dr. Andrew Hill, put out an interim update that softened their stance on ivermectin for the use of COVID-19. The new recommendation from the NIH changed from against the use of ivermectin, with the exception of clinical trials, to neither for nor against the use of the drug against the virus. Essentially neutral now. In the NIH's statement, they said that they were awaiting adequately powered, well-designed, and well-conducted clinical trials. This is somewhat confounding since it disregards the scientific importance of the objective and reproducible findings in 32 controlled trials conducted in countries throughout the world, 20 of which are randomized controlled trials. And so, in response to this, the FLCCC put out a statement which reads that we are grateful that the panel has upgraded the recommendation from against use to a neutral stance that neither promotes nor discourages the use of ivermectin by doctors. A similar neutral stance applies to monoclonal antibodies and convalescent plasma, both of which are widely used in COVID-19 treatment in the U.S. However, these therapies are objectively inferior to ivermectin in three critical ways. 1. Ivermectin is the only one of these three therapies that has multiple randomized controlled trials and a meta-analysis of RCTs that demonstrate statistically significant large reductions in mortality rates, shorter durations of hospital stay, profound reductions in the infectivity rate in both pre- and post-exposure prophylaxis studies, faster times to clinical recovery, faster times to viral clearance, and ivermectin is the only one of these three therapies that is globally available, low cost, given orally, requires no special shipping or handling, and is safe to use in nearly all clinical situations. Their statement went on to say that ivermectin is the only one of these three therapies that can be widely used in both early outpatient treatment as well as in prevention of transmission, i.e. prophylactic. Now, the FLCCC went on to respond to the NIH treatment guidelines panel list of limitations, which, among other things, stated that the sample size of most of the trials was small. The Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance reply to this was that the trials on ivermectin were not small, which they defined as less than 100 patients, a number traditionally quoted as being required to confidently detect a mortality benefit from a treatment. 10 of the 17 RCTs, or randomized controlled trials, of ivermectin in COVID-19, ignoring the prophylaxis trials, included more than 100 patients in each, and 5 included over 50 patients in each. Additionally, meta-analysis of the randomized controlled trials provide the most certain updates of treatment effects, much more so than any single, even large trial can. At the time of the combined presentation to the NIH panel, they were provided the results of a meta-analysis including 17 randomized controlled trials and over 2,100 patients. And then 14 of the 17 RCTs reported statistically significant benefits in a variety of important outcomes. It is true that no single trial contains thousands of patients, yet it is also true that a trial of such a size requires either a major pharmaceutical corporation, the NIH, or a well-resourced academic medical center to fund, which none have yet done so far. Now, the FLCCC concluded their statement by saying that they were disappointed by the panel's hesitancy to make a recommendation in support of ivermectin, while also signaling that they were thankful for the commitment of the panel to closely monitor the findings of the randomized controlled trials near to completion. They went on to state that the evidence in favor of ivermectin is growing rapidly. as it now includes approximately 32 controlled trials, with 20 of them as RCTs, with a large majority showing statistically significant impacts on time to viral clearance. They also pleaded with the panel to review and reconsider the current strength of their recommendation on ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19. And of course, we'll be continuing to keep you posted on this story as it continues to develop. So for this next story on the Roundup, the Deutsche Apothekerzeitung, or the DAZ, represents an independent pharmaceutical journal for science and practice. Appearing weekly, the publication is targeted for pharmacists and other pharmaceutical professional groups. Their website, daz.online, is read by health and pharmacy professionals in Germany interested in health policy and evidence-based pharmacy. Although the topic of ivermectin hasn't yet been broadly discussed in much Western press on both sides of the Atlantic, that is now appearing to be changing. Since the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance announced their meta-analysis based on ivermectin studies targeting COVID-19, the topic has been gaining momentum by the day. In the latest DAZ.online, Dr. Helga Blasius summarized the current situation. She referenced the move by the Australian-based researchers identifying the potential of the drug, which happens to be on the World Health Organization's essential medicines list. Dr. Blasius points to the growing number of clinical trials involving ivermectin around the world and reminded the German reader that for whatever reason, the drug hasn't been the focus in the United States or Europe. Now, Blasius discussed the FLCCC meta-analysis covering not only randomized controlled trials, but also real-world data. Now, she shared 12 of the 24 peer-reviewed studies involving almost 4,000 patients, which these studies point out that ivermectin can significantly reduce the viral load associated with SARS-CoV-2 in humans, with the ability to not only curb the transmission and development of the virus in infected people, it also accelerated recovery and prevented mild cases to becoming moderate to severe. Now, Helga Blasius comments that it should help to avoid hospitalization and reduce mortality in critically ill patients with COVID-19, and in regions with high infection rates also reduce the case mortality. She commented on the fact that the safety profile is well known and that the drug is economical and available, and suggests that the drug should at least be considered for lower to middle income countries. For our final story of the Roundup, the London School of Hygiene Tropical Medicine, or the LSHTM, has launched a major ivermectin study in a West African country of the Gambia. Targeting 1,200 participants, the investigators from the LSHTM's Medical Research Council, or the MRC unit, will assess the impact of ivermectin and many regulatory bodies around the world on the natural history of SARS-CoV-2 in 2 cohorts, including those with mild or moderate pneumonia and those with severe pneumonia, via a randomization to non-identical placebo or intervention arm. So let's talk then about the study. Well, this trial is being conducted, as I mentioned, in the Gambia, working closely with the Gambian Ministry of Health. A long list of investigators and government officials have designed the trial and are working on its implementation, which is very important for that country and the region. This despite challenging trial implementation due to the stigmatization surrounding COVID-19. Now, the study is targeting 1,200 participants, and the LSHTM sponsors is one of the largest studies to date that started in January, according to a recent disclosure with clinicaltrials.gov. Now, this study again commences this month with the planned estimated primary completion date in March of 2022 and the estimated study completion date of July 2022 as well. And so it appears that the movement to investigate ivermectin as a safe and effective treatment for COVID-19 continues to grow. And that, my friends, brings this episode to a close. As always, thank you so much for joining us for this week's News Roundup. From Trial Site News, I'm Adrian, and I will see you all next time.